no one had in their brain that this was going to be mainlined to the internet,
Yes,
which is what happens
yes.
now. Any photo that gets taken of you,
Yeah.
you're safe to assume that's like literally being uploaded
Sure.
that day up to Instagram or social media or something.
Yeah.
And so everyone's like hyper aware now of like everything you're doing is going to be a public thing immediately. But when I was shooting then, it was like, it's film. I'm not even going to like, we're not going to see this till I get home from the trip. And then maybe weeks after that, when I take it to the lab or get it developed. And then it just goes into the ether. Like these guys are like, oh, this is just Ed's archive. He doesn't work for Thrasher. He's not, this isn't going in the this is just like stuff he's shooting. So no one even thought like it was that weird. And I wasn't shooting that much. It was always like, I had the camera, but a lot of times I'm driving the van most of the time. I'm doing the demo. I'm skating the demo and then doing the autograph session, which is what our tours were consisted of. That might be like 4 hours of skating and 2 more hours of hanging out. And then I would go grab my camera and try to shoot some kids at the demo that I saw or whatever. It was really spotty looking back. Like it wasn't as crazy or intrusive as people might think.
Are you ready, boys? Start spinning.
That's Ed Templeton. I'm Jamie Brissick. This is Soundings, brought to you by the Surfers Journal. The Journal is a member-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Outerknown, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. More like a book than a magazine, the Journal delivers 136 pages of independent storytelling every 8 weeks, covering the people, culture, travel, and art of surfing. To learn more and to subscribe, please visit surfersjournal.com. This episode of Soundings is presented by Costa Sunglasses. If you're anything like me and you spend lots of time around the water, then you know just how important it is to have a good pair of shades. And since 1983, when a group of intrepid outdoorsmen set out to make sunglasses that could stand up to the harsh environments they regularly encountered, Costa remains the choice in eyewear among those committed to life on the water. So whether you're diving in, climbing a board, suiting up, sliding one, leaning back, or all the above, head to costadelmar.com to grab your pair and to see what's out there. Ed Templeton is a professional skateboarder, contemporary artist, and photographer. A teen skate prodigy from Orange County, California, Ed turned pro in 1990, just before graduating high school. He did a lot of touring for skate demos, along the way picking up a camera and documenting the scene around him. He painted and drew, and later incorporated his artwork and graphics for Toy Machine, the skateboard company he founded in 1994 and continues to own and manage, which became known for decks emblazoned with cartoonish monsters and ads full of sardonic corporate speak. Trans World Skateboarding magazine named Ed the 20th most influential skater of all time, and he was inducted into the Skateboard Hall of Fame in 2016. Ed's artwork first gained recognition in the late 1990s as part of the Beautiful Losers collective, loosely gathered around Aaron Rose's alleged gallery on Manhattan's Lower East Side. Ed and his wife Deanna, also a photographer, are the subjects of the 2000 Mike Mills film, Deformer. Ed's work focuses on the ethos of suburban and street life, which sometimes includes beach culture, surfers, and surfing. He has published over 30 titles of his photographs and artwork to date, including one of his most famous books, Teenage Smokers. His work has been shown in galleries and museums worldwide, most recently at the Long Beach Museum of Art in an exhibition titled Wires Crossed, The Culture of Skateboarding, 1995 to 2012. Ed and I spoke at the Templetons' Huntington Beach home. We sat in their living room. The shelves were stuffed with art books. The walls were covered in photographs and paintings. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Hello, thank you.
So, skateboarding, I skated when I was very young, and the thing I remember most is becoming so intimately familiar with every crack in the sidewalk and every little, piece of the driveway and edges to turn off. I would imagine that's so deeply etched into you, just this intimacy with the pavement.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, everyone is everyone has hit that crack or starting when they first start off and just got body slammed to the cement. So yeah, you quickly sort of realize those little tiny things. I don't think it goes away ever. I think that initial like understanding of the minutia of what's around you
Yeah.
kind of gets ingrained in you. I think if you're young and you start skating, that's part of it.
Yes.
Because as a skateboarder, you're part of the street. You're like the milieu of the street, you know. I found that everywhere we go, no matter how dangerous the area, we're the attraction. We're the crazy people doing stuff. And so we would find ourselves in these like crazy, you know, ghettos outside of Miami, Florida, where everyone would say, don't go there, you'll get killed. But there's a bank there, we want to skate. Mm-hmm. So we'd show up there, and all the local dudes that, you know, in theory, if you were just walking by yourself, might be scary. They just see a bunch of white kids skating, and it's like a circus act. And so they come in, they're like, what's up? And you're suddenly like one of the street people.
Yes.
So as a skateboarder, you're like one of those street people, the people that you drive by and are like, whoa, look at these, you know, people having a mental health problem or whatever, or homeless people. Like as a skateboarder, you're on that level. You're at street level, basically part of that poetry of the streets, you know, if you will.
No, that's a nice way of putting it. I think when I think back on it, and when you say it's etched deep, and I still dream of, you know, skate parks I used to ride or runs down the street that I would have, and I can actually still remember from when I was 12 years old, little places where I could, that little edge, a little bit of oil spill on the driveway, which I could start the slide of my back wheels. But what I think back on now, and I'd love to hear what you think, is it's so resourceful and it's so inventive. The idea of sort of just looking at something and going, oh, I can play off that right there.
Yeah, I mean, the whole world is your playground.
Yeah.
When you, that's the freedom of street skating, especially. I mean, I think when I first got into it, we were all looking at vert guys. There wasn't as many street archetypes yet. They were starting. I mean, Mark Gonzalez and Natas Kappas were known quantities for sure, and but they weren't like what the magazines covered. I mean, we were looking at Chris Miller and Tony Hawk and like Steve Caballero and these guys. And so when we were skating like a bench, I wasn't thinking about Mark Gonzalez. I was thinking about Chris Miller, like, you know, hauling ass and doing a lip slide across the whole ramp with his style. That's the style I was trying to mimic, was these vert skaters. A lot of street skating was mimicking vert guys. Like the whole idea of hand plants just on this flat ground was just pretending you're Jeff Grosso or something. So, but then as that evolved a little bit and some videos of people like Gons and Natas started trickling out, I mean, whoever did the first handrail, for instance, like as just, here's a thing out in the world. It's a fully utilitarian architectural device that is designed to help people get up a set of stairs. And to see like that first skater do that, and then it gets put in a magazine, and kids all around the world are like, minds are being blown with like, what? Like, you know, we might have rail slid a curb, but then that, you know, was like dangerous, a little scarier. But, you know, just the idea of that, like, I think just looking at that means everything. You realize everything is potentially something.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I mean, skaters are getting really weird. If you look at, like, we have a rider on our team, Miles Willard, who is just so creative and just finds the weirdest spots, like stuff you just never would think was something skatable, and he does something on it. And so it's just, it's mind-blowing what people are doing now and like what they find, and it just takes that idea to the you know, furthest extreme, like just that anything is potentially something to skate.
Yep. So you became a pro skater, as I've understood it, your senior year of high school, 1990. What can you kind of describe? Like, I remember that as being a very interesting kind of a change in the skate world in terms of a lot of pro skaters sort of starting their own companies. There was a very strong DIY spirit. I guess you could say there always has been in skateboarding, but that time in particular, it seems.
Yeah, it was funny. I read a little bio on you yesterday in preparation for the podcast kind of thing, and I realized that our trajectories are kind of similar. You in surfing and me in skating, and feeling alienated from the sort of jock culture that is pervasive in both lifestyles for sure. But so yeah, I think in a lot of ways there's a kinship there.
Yeah.
And so for me, 1990. I mean, I guess you were probably like starting to leave.
I was fading out at that time.
Yeah, 91.
Yeah.
And so I'm just starting out in a way. So I started skating in 1985, was pro by 1990. So that's five short years, which I chalk up to just being born in the right place. You know, like chance has such a big part of our lives. I don't think people acknowledge how much chance actually plays in your life. They like to pretend that they're like self-made men and all this stuff, but like a lot of it is the roll of the dice, genetics. You know, the fact that I was able to last this long is just, genetically was tough enough to last. I didn't break as much stuff as other people did. And I was born in Southern California where the skate industry was based. So if I had any talent, the chances of me getting seen were just like tenfold, which is what happened. I got noticed and got sponsored and all that stuff. If I was in Texas, that wouldn't have been the case, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, by 1990, I turned pro for a company called New Deal. But like you said, in that sort of period, there was a lot of fluctuation in the skate industry. I guess it was kind of crashing in a way. Like 92, 93 was like a really low period in skateboarding. And so I left the company I was with to start a company with a friend, which kind of crumbled really quickly. And I found myself without a job, but I had a little taste at doing the company with my friend. And I really thought like, okay, I have so many ideas and I'm interested in like art, but also just doing this. And in theory, I wanted to do something that I could do much longer than my pro career would last. Mm-hmm. I feel really fortunate that my grandfather was really influential to me in that he quickly recognized, he hated the idea of skateboarding. My grandfather was my father figure. We're going to go on a bunch of tangents here, but my grandfather was my father. My father left when I was 8 years old or in 8th grade. I can't remember which. I was young. He took off. It was a whole ordeal with like a 16-year-old babysitter.
Wow.
Maybe 14 years. It was nuts.
Wow.
And so I had no father figure in that way, except for my grandfather.
Did you have siblings?
I have a brother. One brother who's a year younger than me.
Okay.
And the divorce affected him, I think, a lot more than it did me. Mm-hmm. But we both started acting up in school right around at that time and became, ne'er-do-wells. My grandfather, and I feel lucky, looking back, I feel really lucky that my father figure was someone born in 1919, like a totally different generation. So some of the slang and the references that he did were like ingrained in me at a young age, like the stuff he would say and the things, how he would act. And obviously that's like the greatest generation. And he followed suit with all that stuff. As soon as Pearl Harbor was bombed, he like signed up and, got his wife pregnant, got married, got her pregnant, went to war. His son's born while he was in the Navy in the Pacific. And, anyway, that's a long way to get to. He put it in my head that skateboarding was a finite activity, something that I've passed down to my team riders when we talk about life and philosophy. I try to remind these guys that, like, you're going to live 80 years, 90 years. Skateboarding is such a small part of it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to think about what you're doing over here. A lot of these guys just, like, they're all about pro skateboarding. It's their whole identity. And when that, their knee blows out and suddenly they're not pro anymore and they have no money and no job and they've all their college years and a lot of cases high school years were just spent partying.
Yes.
And they have nothing to like do. They have no idea how to even function in the real world outside of their fame within skateboarding and stuff like that. So it's something that was ingrained in me, and that's why I wanted to start a company. So I had that chance to sort of pitch. I was pitching people the idea for Toy Machine. I have an idea. I want to I have guys that want to ride for us. So I have a built-in team already. Let's do this. And so that kind of gets to, I forget, we went way off your original question, but
No, but I guess, well, it's interesting what you said about kind of encouraging your young team riders to see the long picture, because I agree with that 100%, and it's real, and you get whacked over the head and suddenly your career's over and it happens so quickly. But I also have this idea that a lot of the really great sort of pro surfers that I've known, part of the thing that made them so good was that they gave everything to it. And if they had a plan B, that would have almost been a practical line of thinking that might have diminished their kind of killer instinct as competitors. So it can sort of go both way. But the one thing that I think you coming from skateboarding, myself coming from surfing is, it's like you just know this thing's going to end early and you have to sort of figure out what the rest of your life is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And so for me, Toy Machine has been that platform.
Yeah.
To springboard into so many other things. Wanted to start it for that reason. Like if I'm doing a company, then in theory, when I retire from pro skateboarding, I've also can keep working on this thing that I love.
Yeah.
Working with skaters, doing this stuff. It's fun. It's like a great way to just make money, and we're not operating on the capitalist system where it's like have to grow each year. We're totally fine just being a regular skateboard company. Like we've always been a bigger of the small companies and the smallest of the big companies. We've just been middle of the ground the whole time. We work on a skeleton. We have a skeleton crew. It's all skaters. I mean, I started it with Todd Swank, who's a famous old pro skater, who was also like a big influence as far as making zines and in that culture. Like he photographed for Transworld, and he was a pro skater himself, but all his stuff was like zine aesthetic was his thing. So it's just great that, and I've been doing this now for 31 years with him on a handshake deal. We don't even have a contract set up or anything. It's just like a handshake, like bro deal. Like, yep, we're doing it together.
And Toy Machine has a longer name. There's a more formal title. What is it?
Toy Machine Blood-Sucking Skateboard Company.
So great. I love the kind of taking the piss out of the capitalist model, and the skateboarders, your quote unquote customers are in on the joke with you.
Totally, yeah. All the language for Toy Machine is just like, I try to imagine like what would Nike or Coca-Cola wish they could say.
Yeah.
Wish they could do, but they can't.
Yeah.
Like we can do all that stuff. We can just, we talk about brainwashing and purchase is mandatory. My new slogan this lately has been, we await your capitulation. Just talking about good. Like stealing your mom's credit card to buy Toy Machine stuff. And we have like our loyal pawns, we call them.
Uh-huh.
I've been kind of dubbed the benevolent overlord. So there's a lot of like, I just have fun playing with like cult language or addiction language and using it, like replacing skateboarding with it. So we did this like, skateboarding is the most addictive drug kind of thing, like freebase Toy Machine or get injected with Toy Machine, like that kind of stuff all the time.
So good.
Lots of brainwashing, like psychology. Just kind of, like taking the piss out of it all basically.
Yeah. There's such a great sense of play. Maybe we could talk about this one, but skating has a sort of spirit of irreverence that might be stronger than what surfing is in some way, at least the surfing world of today. Earlier on, I felt it was very kind of countercultural and rebellious, but now it doesn't. Now a lot of the surfing seems just more of the mainstream than it did. But it's interesting to see that spirit, and when I knowing you for many years now and knowing your work, we talked about Toy Machine, but at what point did you literally and figuratively train your lens on it to document it?
Yeah, I think, skateboarding in 86, 85 was not cool. It was, you were more likely to get picked on or fucked with by people. All the time skating in parking lots, at night practicing flat ground. Cars of jocks would drive by, like, fuck you skaters, all this kind of stuff. It just wasn't cool. And so there's a misfit attitude. I realized that I came from a broken home. something I've noticed at that early stage, like almost all of my friends had fucked up family lives too, and there was like a sort of through line that I was noticing, like a lot of people that found skating were coming from weird situations where team sports wasn't going to cut it for them, and yeah, skateboarding was more individualistic. It was more do it yourself. There was a punk ethos to it, and as kids, I mean, my mother and my father were like, I mean, white trash might be the best way to describe. We literally lived in a trailer park in Corona for a while.
Okay.
So the culture that I got was from my grandparents. They took us to museums and stuff, and so I saw adults like considering paintings and thought, like, what is this? Like, so I think that seed was planted there, and then just naturally was attracted to the artsy side of skateboarding when I started. I remember looking at boards on the wall and realizing that Mark Gonzalez drew that graphic, Chris Miller drew that graphic, and I was really drawn to those. Neil Blender, these guys who did their own graphics. So I made this promise to myself that if I ever turned pro, I wanted to draw my own graphics. And almost like setting a self-imposed assignment, I wasn't an artist, I drew in a sketchbook and like whatever, but I did not consider myself an artist. But that promise I made to myself, like if I get turned pro, and here I am now going pro, and Paul Schmidt, who was doing New Deal, was like, this is also a big part, is like Paul Schmidt ran the company such a democratic way. He was just like, you're in control of your image, you're in control of your graphics. We don't want to do anything where we hand it down from above, which is something I took to Toy Machine as well. So like, as an 18-year-old being presented with like, what are you going to do for your graphic? So that's where I really started with that.
Wow.
I mean, I think I had been art, a little artsy, I guess, but yeah, that was the first time I was like, okay, officially I need to draw something that's going to be seen in public, is going to be criticized by people or whatever, or seen by people. And that, like the start of a long, now since 1990 to now, I've been doing skateboard graphics nonstop. And that was a big jump into it. And then, I don't know, I almost don't know how to trace the painting side. I mean, I think the year I turned pro, I started painting.
Okay.
I came back from a trip to Europe. I got sent to Europe to do skate contests. And I think as a suburban kid growing up in Huntington Beach, that first trip to Europe, I was like almost freaked out about, like I tried to extract so much out of that trip. All the guys I was with wanted to just go drink in the bars at night. And I was like, fuck that. I'm like going to go walk around and explore the city and like go to museums and check all this art out. And I just remember coming back from that trip filled with like, oh my God, Europe is so much cooler than fucking Orange County.
Yeah.
And the way art is considered. I mean, you're hanging out with skaters from there and talking to people, and like, I'm just in these conversations about how cool everything was. I mean, this was at a time, I think they've relaxed it now, but you get busted for jaywalking, and like talking to Europeans are like, why would we do that? We don't care. Like everything's so much like more logical there, I thought.
Sure.
But really it was the embrace of art. They had like, obviously you're in a city that is like 3 times older than California.
Yeah.
You're standing on bricks and going into churches that are like from the 1400s and stuff like that. And looking at art from the 1200s even. And so yeah, I just came back naively declaring myself a painter. I just said, that's it, I'm painting. I'm going to start painting. And they're super shitty, but I just loved it. And so I started painting.
Wow. And you were never a drinker. Were you always?
Yeah, I never drank. I wouldn't call myself straight edge, even though I guess in terms that everyone understands, I was a straight edge kid. But I wasn't like an X on the hands type of guy. And you don't look at my profile and it says vegan straight edge or something like that. It's like, I don't eat, like, that's just how I eat. Yeah. And it's just what I drink or what I don't drink isn't really part of like what it's just like a matter of fact thing for me. I don't really think about it. We're not dogmatic about it in any way,
Right. So you're pro skater, you Toy Machine, you're creative. When did you pick up a camera? When did you actually start shooting?
So that was 4 years into being pro. 1994, I guess, is when I sort of when I at least had a realization that I want to shoot photos in a real way. I had always had a camera before, just for touristy stuff, but I wasn't really thinking that outside of the fact that I'm going to have a memory for myself. I wasn't thinking this could be a piece of art that might talk to someone else. It was more for me. And then I think around 94 is when I had that realization that this is an art too. Like I had started being exposed to Dan Golden and Larry Clark and a bunch of photography that really opened my eyes to what photography could do. And you know, this is a well-worn thing I've talked about a lot, and I even talk about it in the text at the show that was on the wall. But like seeing those books gave me an example, especially in Dan Golden and Larry Clark's case. They were shooting their own circles.
Yeah.
Dan Golden was shooting her friend group in New York City, and that was like a roadmap for me. Like, wow,
Right.
like I had that realization 4 years in that who gets to live this life?
Yeah.
I'm getting paid to do exactly what I would be doing anyway.
Yep.
And you're kind of famous because you're known. And like, you know, when you show up to a skate shop, I mean, not in the real world, but in our world, you show up to a shop and people are stoked to see you and they want to see you skate. And because of that, the people I was around, not me as much, I feel like I was kind of grounded, I guess, from an earlier age. But a lot of the guys I was with, you know, like took that and ran with it. Like they were rock stars and they acted as much, you know, and which is something I was interested in. So I'm like all at that moment around 94 is when I realized, like I saw those books. I realized, holy shit, look at this privileged position I'm in. What an insider position to like document this culture.
Yeah.
I'm part of this culture. These guys are living hard and fast lives and I'm sort of there. We've already described how I might have been a little bit just from having these like older influences and not drinking and stuff like that. So I was around people who were doing that stuff and being not dogmatic. I wasn't imposing anything. I was just living with people doing all this stuff, partying every night and getting wasted and smoking weed. And like all of our early toy machine trips was like, I mean, it's weird because it's like, it was all revolved around weed. All the guys cared about was like the next spot to buy weed.
Yeah.
Let's get beers. Let's do this. So it was like, you know, aside from like going to skate spots and skating, it was just getting wasted and skating and then chasing girls.
Yeah.
And so that's what I like wanted to document. So that was like my epiphany was just like, oh, like this is incredible.
Yeah.
I'm going to start documenting this using those examples.
It's such an interesting thing to document because it's not an easy one to penetrate unless you're among that crowd as you were.
That's what I mean. I
These
felt
are
like
tough
I had
kids that are like, you know,
an outsider is not going to be able to walk up
Yeah.
and just start shooting skate culture.
Yeah.
And so I was on the inside.
Yeah. And so this is one of the rare moments where I'm sitting across from you. You don't have a camera around your neck, but as long as I've known you, you've always had a camera. At what point were you? There's that thing that happens, and I used to shoot myself a little bit, and where you sort of everything becomes within the rectangle, and you're always like photography almost inhabits you. I'm sure you know this feeling well.
Yeah, that comes and goes. I've noticed. I mean, maybe more for me lately, but even in those early years, I realized I didn't shoot that much.
Okay.
I shoot way more now than I did. I think that predicament you describe, photo eyes or whatever, is more lately than it was. Because even in compiling the book, I would come back. I would be looking at a certain tour and realize I did a whole like month-long tour, and I came back with like 8 rolls, which isn't a lot of shooting, you know. So I realized like, gosh, I wasn't even shooting that much. I talked to one of the guys who's in the book a lot, Josh Harmony, the other day, and we were reminiscing about the book and everything, and I was telling him that little factoid that I realized I wasn't shooting that much, and he's like, yeah, he's like, people ask now that the book's out, they're asking like, oh, were you? Was it intrusive? Were you coming, like, were people like, oh, why is this guy always shooting photos of us and stuff like that? And we were kind of discussing how this is before social media. So when I'm shooting a photo, no one had in their brain that this was going to be mainlined to the internet, which is what happens now. Any photo that gets taken of you, you're safe to assume that's like literally being uploaded that day up to Instagram or social media or something. Yeah. And so everyone's like hyper aware now of like everything you're doing is going to be a public thing immediately. But when I was shooting then, it was like, it's film. I'm not even going to like, we're not going to see this till I get home from the trip. And then maybe weeks after that, when I take it to the lab or get it developed. And then it just goes into the ether. Like these guys are like, oh, this is just Ed's archive. He doesn't work for Thrasher. He's not, this isn't going in the mat. This is just like stuff he's shooting. So no one even thought like it was that weird. And I wasn't shooting that much. It was always like, I had the camera, but a lot of times I'm driving the van most of the time. I'm doing the demo. I'm skating the demo and then doing the autograph session, which is what our tours were consisted of. That might be like 4 hours of skating and 2 more hours of hanging out. And then I would go grab my camera and try to shoot some kids at the demo that I saw or whatever. It was really spotty looking back. Like it wasn't as crazy or intrusive as people might think.
Interesting. And when you realized you had captured a lot and had something to work with, did it first find form in zines? Did it first find form in books or shows, exhibitions? How did it, like at what point did you first sort of display?
All the above. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in a way I was like angry when I started compiling the book because I wish I had been more hardcore about saving stuff.
Yep. And the book, just for our listener, it's Wires Cross, which is your recent exhibition at the Long Beach Museum of Art.
Yeah, just ended.
Yes, and we'll get into all that. But yes, so just that people know.
Yeah, Wires
and
Cross.
This is like the entire. This is like all the work, right?
I think there might be another book.
Okay.
In the at least in my on my back burner. But yeah, this is like the official version of the book, and this is why I started shooting. We discussed that, the idea of like I wanted to shoot skate culture. So from the beginning, I knew it was going to be a book. Although at that point in my life, I had no, idea that it would actually be. I mean, it was just the idea was a book. I had no idea. I had no means to make a book at that point. No publisher was coming at me. It was just like I knew because I was a fan of photo books. Like this is my book, and I in a way, I almost had faith that at some point it'll come together and be a book. But then that work was trickling through all my stuff. Like I started doing shows. Like I started shooting in '94. I think in 1998, I had the first show where I had been showing paintings all this whole time. So in like '94, I had a show with Aaron Rose at Alleged Gallery in New York City, where it was all only paintings. I'd done some other shows around that were painting shows. '98, I did a show at Space 1026 in Philadelphia that was mostly paintings, but I had this little row along the bottom of photographs because I had been shooting. And so I was like, you know what, I want to like start showing photographs. So I had this like first showing of photographs in 1998, and I bet some of those were probably photos of skaters and stuff like that. So the work has been present. The work that's in Wires Cross has been present in a bunch of my shows. The Beautiful Losers show, shows with Aaron Rose, shows at my galleries now in LA. This work's been kind of in it. I did a book called The Golden Age of Neglect in 2002, which has a lot of the photos in this book in it. So I was really like kind of freaked out that I had like maybe let the cat out of the bag. I wish maybe I had held on to it more, but in a lot of ways, like sharing that work also gave me opportunities to do other books and shows, because it's some of my strongest work, I guess. So, but I knew that this book would be the actual story. Like, here's the story. Yes, some of those photos that you've seen are in here, but there's just so much more.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much more than just like all the support photos are in here. A bunch of great photos that I didn't know I had are in here. And then journal entries, maps, ephemera. I just have collected a lot of stuff to try to tell the story of what it was like to be a pro skater during this time period.
Yep. I think I knew your work in various places, but one that I distinctly remember really leaping out at me was your book, Teenage Smokers. Was that, did you consciously go out to keep grabbing pictures of people smoking, or did you suddenly edit and go, oh, there's this theme here?
A little of both. So yeah, I credit Aaron Rose for starting that series because I think he didn't remember this. I talked to him recently, and he says he doesn't remember telling me this, but I always look back and think he's the one who said, hey, you shoot a lot of kids smoking. You should do a series about that. Mm-hmm. And as soon as he said it, it was like, in a way it was already happening. Like, cause I was interested in like, it was like a byproduct of being at a skate park a lot of times.
Right.
Like I'm a guy who has like a camera and you go to a skate park and there was always just kids smoking at skate parks.
Yeah.
Skaters are not. And so whenever I saw someone really young smoking, I always saw like, this is so crazy to me. Like, I mean, as a non-smoker, I always be like, oh, you're starting so young. Like I see these 15-year-old kids smoking. So I just started asking for portraits. And it really started because when we'd go to the Huntington Beach skate park, which was like literally connected to the high school here in Huntington. It's no longer there, but that was my like daily skate spot. I would just go there and skate all day. And so I brought a Polaroid camera because every day after school, all the kids would kind of collect there and all the ne'er-do-wells would be smoking there after school. And so, yeah, I brought a Polaroid camera one day and just started asking kids for a photo of them inhaling. And that's where it started. So I had all these Polaroids. So the Teenage Smoker book is mostly Polaroids. And then once I had that conversation with Aaron and I didn't realize I was fully doing it, then I started really going after it. So then, but again, as a byproduct of like, I'm a, 20-something-year-old pro skater who gets to travel the world, and the people I'm skating for are 15 to 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I'm around all these kids, and I'm not like a weirdo. They know who I am, So it was like really great access in a way, just to be like, I'm at the park and I can shoot anyone because everyone's like, oh, there's a Templeton. Like he wants to shoot a photo of me. Cool. So I was able to get all these photos because I wasn't just like a creeper at the park.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that lasted really long. I mean, I was skating up until my 40s, in my early 40s, and able to shoot young people because there was no weirdness there.
Right. We're here at your house in Huntington Beach where you live with your wife, Deanna, and you are both artists. And you gave me the tour of the house, and just looking at sort of the way your rooms are occupied in this 5-bedroom home compared to your neighbors, do you feel like this sort of anomaly or black sheep in the neighborhood?
A little bit. We have such a love-hate relationship with Suburbia and Huntington Beach. So yeah, there's just like a weird tension between us and the city. But then I think because everyone asked like, why didn't you leave? Like there was a point. I was going to ask that. There was a point when probably we should have left. We should have went to LA or even New York or something that would fit our lifestyle more. But I think the main reason was because Toy Machine is based in San Diego.
I see.
And when Toy Machine started, this was before the internet you were able to like zap everything through the internet back and forth. So I was like making ads and having to put it on like a big old SyQuest drive and like drive it down to San Diego to like deliver it to the magazine for the ad and stuff like that. And so when we started the company in 94 or 93, Swank was like, you got to move to San Diego. And I was like, oh, I don't want to move to San Diego. Like I had lived here and grown up here. So I was kind of, in a way I had roots here in Huntington Beach. My grandparents lived here. I didn't want to move. So I think at the point when I might have like flown the coop, it kind of kept me here because it was like a halfway point between LA and San Diego in a way. It wasn't as far. So we just stayed here, did all the driving.
Yeah.
And then you might ask like, well, why when the internet happened and you can just zap it, why didn't you get up and leave? Again, I don't know. I think we had already like bought a house and had, Deanna's family's here. There was a lot of little reasons that just kind of mostly convenience in a lot of ways too. It's like for the price this house is you saw it, it's like a 5-bedroom house. We have a 3-car garage. There's a dark room. I paint in the studio. If I were to like sell this house right now for what it's worth, I would still be only able to afford like a 3-bedroom house in LA.
Yeah, right.
Yep. And so we would be shrinking a lot if we tried to move to New York. I mean, in New York, I don't even know if we could afford it. Yeah. But LA even would be a big shrink.
Yeah.
And as you can see, we're pack rats. We have lots of books, lots of photographs, lots of stuff.
Yeah, the interior of your place, I'm sure, looks very different to your neighbors. But the answer you gave was very different to what I thought you were going to say, which is probably my projecting on you. But I grew up in suburbia as well. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and it was always a place I was seeing my exit from the beginning. And it was, probably like you, I had punk rock songs in my head. And there was this thing of like, I don't want this mediocre life that I see around me. I want something more for myself. And now I look back and I'm actually very grateful to that because it kind of gave me this thing to push against. In many ways, it drove me. It was sort of like rather than being inspired by what was around me, I was uninspired, and that made me want to get out to the world and have a more worldly experience. But clearly you and Deanna have done that. Like you guys have shows around the world. You've traveled a ton. And I thought you were going to say, I almost feel loyalty to this place that kind of inadvertently gave me this big life.
Yeah, no loyalty at all. But very similar to what you're saying, though. I mean, in a way, it gives me something to rebel against. All of my art lately, all my paintings, and a lot of our photographs are about suburbia.
Yeah.
We're my photographs of this place, I feel like, are critical of it.
Yeah.
There's a critique in there. There's a cynical eye to what the place I live in.
Yeah.
But I'm also able to acknowledge, because of the fact that as a pro skater, we were able to travel, and now through art, we were able to travel. So we get to leave this place a lot and spend months in Europe at a time, or go to Japan, often like a couple times a year. So we're not here all the time, which gives us that break, I guess, from here.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a criticalness of here, and it kind of gives me something. It's almost like my inspiration now is like the fact that I live here. I found it to just be like a deep well of inspiration. I'm just like fascinated by the whole idea of the suburbs, and like the guy across the street, Jerry's a retired barber. And so during the pandemic, he's retired. So I saw him like giving haircuts in there. So now for the last like 3 years, all my haircuts are just over at Jerry's house right across the street.
That's great.
I text him like, hey, you want to give me a haircut? And he's just like, sure. So it's like, so in that way, I'm like part of this weird suburban community.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I'm perceived, though. I mean, everyone from a long time knew I was a pro skateboarder.
Yeah.
I think in the neighborhood, there was like local kids who knew I lived here. So they'd come over and get stickers and boards for me.
Yeah.
And so their parents kind of knew, like, oh, there's a pro skater guy who lives over there. So I think they probably all assumed I was some party animal.
Right.
But in fact, we're like so quiet here. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have any parties, or never loud or annoying or anything. Yeah. So we're like, on the exterior, we're just like a suburban house, and you come in and you see this different world.
Yeah. But I can see, actually, I just thought of this as you were saying that, but I can see at this stage of life, being in your 40s.
Well, I'm 51 now.
51. Your identity is more formed. You're doing the things that you want to do and I think my part of, again, I don't want to project onto you, but part of my kind of like suburban disgust was just fearing I was going to become like these people that I did not derive inspiration from. They were like not the people that I was looking up to. And so I think in many ways my kind of dreams were really in a result of not wanting to fall into that, and I was yet to be formed. And now I could absolutely see living in a suburban place and not feeling like I'm going to become like my neighbors or something like that.
I think I embrace it. That's the duality, I guess, is that I embrace the fact that I am part of this.
Yes.
I'm part of it. I am one of these people.
Yeah.
I'm like that suburban guy. And a lot of our life is that. I mean, we fully cook dinner every night. We take a walk around this neighborhood. We're those people. But I also am secure in knowing that, like, I'm not these people. Mm-hmm. Like I sometimes think, they might be trapped in their little world, and I feel so lucky that I get to like go to Japan and take part in an art show and like know all these cool people and like all this stuff. But those values, like, I realize they don't give a fuck about those values. Mm-hmm. Like, I think they're so cool and I think I'm so different, but they just they don't care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they're like values that they don't have.
Yeah.
Like I value these books and like this seeing, like knowing about this cool band or something, and they just wouldn't have any attachment or entry point to that, So it's kind of like, who are you? What are you trying to prove to them? Because like
right. It was several years ago now, but I remember following you on Instagram and seeing your daily photographs of Huntington, kind of around the pier area or on the pier itself at times. Talk to me about that. When did you begin doing that?
So that was our thing. I mean, it's still ongoing. It's an ongoing series. Both me, Deanna, and I are doing it. It was like I was doing a thing called Daily HP Pure Photo. It was a hashtag, so you can actually go to that, like click that hashtag Daily HP Pure Photo, and you'll see a bunch of my work. Other people started adopting that tag too, and putting stuff in there. So it's kind of a trip to hit that tag and see all the random photos from Huntington Beach and the pier. Because in a way, this is like Venice Light, I guess. I don't know. There's like it has its own group of crazy people.
Yes, and very eclectic. Yeah.
There's a surf community. It's a popular spot. I mean, I think a couple of years ago, USA Today or someone named it like the most popular beach in America. Mm-hmm. In a way, that the pier area became the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. It's like something to go shoot. Mm-hmm. you can get some exercise. So it would be like, most of my day I'm either painting or at a computer working on toy machine stuff. I'm a little fat. And so it was like our daily walk. Let's just get out of the house. We'll take an hour walk on the pier, walk the pier a couple times, like walk around. And it became a photo mission, but we were walking. So it was like, it served two purposes. I was like, let's get our daily walk, get some sun, and shoot a bunch of photos. And so both of us were attacking that place with verve, like shooting, walking, shooting, every single day. It was just drop everything, take a walk, come back. And we started both building just a massive archive of photos because of that. Because if you just do that every day, I mean, some days there's no one there and it's like raining, but then the dailiness of it made, like, you see everything. We saw gray whales coming right up to the pier. We've seen the guys catching sharks. There's guys who try to catch great whites secretly. And like, I knew all the fishermen guys and I would talk to them and shoot photos of them. All the homeless people I knew and knew them by name and would talk to them and shoot and photograph them. The lifeguards, I knew some lifeguards and they would let me up in the tower and I could shoot from up in the tower on the pier, and we'd walk on the sand and just shoot people. And yeah, it was just like a daily thing.
You and Deanna seems like such a great couple, and I've seen you guys kind of at openings for more than a decade, probably 20 years now. How did you guys meet?
So let's see. She was best friends with Mike Valley's girlfriend at the time, Anne. So I was skating with Mike a lot, and he had a girlfriend, Anne, and so Deanna was her best friend. And I think one time they were really into music. So Deanna and Anne were like big music heads. They would go to all the concerts. Like, the amount of shows she saw is mind-blowing. Her whole teenage life was just going to LA to see punk shows and stuff like that before she met me. And so Anne and Deanna were going to ditch school and go see the Chili Peppers. Were supposed to play some free concert in LA. This is like 85 or 86 or something, like early Chili Peppers. Yeah.
Back in the True Men Don't Kill Coyotes days.
Yeah. Deanna's in Fight Like a Brave video.
Okay.
She went there and it's like, there's like a shot of her and Anne like dancing around in the crowd.
It's great LA lore.
Yeah. And, Anne, who's now married to Mike Valley, was dating Jason Lee at the time. And Jason Lee, who was also from Huntington Beach, is who I skated with every day.
Okay.
So I was skating with Jason. I missed the part where I skipped ahead to Mike, but she was with Jason at this time. So she asked, hey, Jason and Ed, do you want to ditch school with us and come see the Chili Peppers? Jason and I were like, yes, we'll ditch school, but this equals a ride to LA for us. We're kids who don't we're 15-year-old kids who don't have a car. And so this represented, we get to go to LA and maybe skate some spots. So we were not interested in the Chili Peppers, but we just got this ride to LA and we skated, and the girls went to the concert, which ended up getting canceled or something. So we ended up just getting to skate around LA. And so that's how we met on the drive up to LA. I met Deanna, and then, weird teenage friction started where, I think Deanna likes you. Oh, I like her too. All that stuff. But she cites that the moment that she really liked me was when she bought me a soda from a machine, like a vending machine. And right when I got it, Jason ripped it out of my hand and opened it and drank it down. And I was like, she's like, I just looked at your little green eyes and you look so sad. Because Jason was kind of in a comedic way. He was a bully. And she saw that little interaction, and that's when she said she fell in love with me. So anyway, that's how and so I was 15, she was 19 or 18. She was 18 and I was 15.
Okay. That's an inspiring story, because so often when you're young like that, you would think that the moment where your friend rips your soda off is you don't look good, but you actually looked obviously good at that time.
I don't know. I think I don't know. She just said I looked up at Jason kind of sad and was it wasn't it was I said, it was all comedic. He was just, he'd always just joked around and was funny in that way. But that's what it was. Yeah. And then we've just been together for, I don't know how long now, but since 85 or 86.
Wow, that's so great. What? Who are your inspirations? Who are your heroes in your life?
You're sitting in them. We're sitting in my library, which is overrunning the house with books. The coffee table's starting to get a little too high here. I just find inspiration in so much stuff. I'm definitely in the school of like, I want to see as much as possible because I think all this stuff ends up in that painting, you know, for instance, like that painting is just like a collection of all these little influences that sort of permeate into your being. I think we're definitely like creatures of our environment and our upbringings. What you see, how you were treated as a kid, your teenage years, the music you hear, the books you read, the art you see, all that just creates the person you are. Again, it's like a lot of it was chance. Like I just happened to be like, why do I like punk and not country? Or, you know, like it just happened to be around people. You know, there was like a point in middle school when I started skating, the first time I picked up a board and like came to school with a skateboard, it just having that thing opened up a whole new world. There was like these punk kids that would avoid. They were scary to me. Like they had mohawks and I watched them get in fights before school. And I had a board and they were just like, hey, come hang out with us. Like, because I had a skateboard. Up until that point, I was just a nondescript nerd. And then suddenly they're like, here, and like, give me a punk tape, you know?
Right.
And then all that's by chance, of course. They could have been country dudes. Hey, come out, hang out with us. And, you know, I'd be in the country for some reason. But like you know, I immediately was just like, get home, put in that tape, and I'm just like hearing Holiday in Cambodia or, you know, Dead Kennedys songs and just like instantly like, what? I don't get this world. I want to know. And so that like got me into like, I just want to know what these lyrics mean. I started like diving into like that world.
No, it's interesting. I think we probably share a parallel there, and I certainly had the early punk stuff, and that kind of articulated a lot of the like angsty feelings I had towards the suburbia and the kind of white bread cookie cutter existence that was surrounding me. And then suddenly punk was this like vibrant, bright, flavorful thing. But thinking about skateboarding, and I skated before I surfed. I kind of had skateboarder magazines lying around when I was 10, 11 years old. And I always think of Craig Stecyk as being someone who opened me up. And it was partly via the Dogtown stories, that kind of the visuals. And it was just, those guys were so cool. But it was also his sort of experimental writing too, that was of a language that was different to the more formal stuff my dad was sharing at that time.
Yeah, I mean, Craig is the master cylinder for sure. He's the kingpin or the linchpin. I don't know what I don't think it can be fathomed how much his take, because it was a take that ended up his take on like how he saw skating, I think framed the generation I'm in. He defined it. But his definition, that's what I mean. It could have been so much different.
For sure.
But it was him. He saw it as art. He saw it as a performance piece. You know? It's not. He just termed it as not jock life. It's a lifestyle. It's an art form. It's a physical, it's a dance, it's a ballet, like all this stuff that he sort of framed it as. His photographs showing this artsy side. I mean, obviously like the Stacy with the hair, it's uncalculable. And I just spoke about this in my talk with Aaron Rose at the museum, but like we're living in it right now. We're still at the early stages of at least skateboarding. I mean, to think that Stecyk is alive. The guy who defined skateboarding, who was there at the inception of it. You look at the movie, it's like it maps this like branch off the waves to skateboarding as a thing like that you did when it was flat. And I mean, that guy who did that is here. He's alive. I can talk to him. That means we're in its infancy. I mean, we're at the. And I sometimes trip out because it's like I felt like as a kid I was looking at Mark Gonzalez and Natas Kappas as my forebears, looking at the magazines. But then as you fast forward 10, 20 years, everything shrinks and you realize like, wait, I'm only 5 years younger than Gons, you know? Like we're in the same generation. Like, yes, he was in the magazines a couple years before me, but that's just weird to think about that, that other people looking at skateboarding from the outside would cite me as an early,
Yeah.
as one of the forefathers of street skating.
Yeah.
I don't see myself like that at all. I can't even fathom it. But like, I guess in a way I am. It's like Gons and Nodis and Mike V, and then my generation is like right there.
Yeah.
The next generation, but that's all within like an 8-year period or something crazy. It's like,
Yeah. Do you still skateboard?
I skate a little bit.
Do you still, does it,
Not, I mean, I would almost say no, but yeah, I mean, I can and do, but not often.
yeah. Do you feel like it sort of permeates, or it's sort of so deeply etched in you that it kind of, it's there in your fingerprints of everything you do?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's like so ingrained in what I do, how I see everything. Deanna likes to say that even the way I shoot and walk around, it's like a skater. She's like, it's like watching a skater. You're like seeing stuff 30 feet ahead of you and getting ready for shots before you even get there, and then shooting and just keep cooking kind of thing. Yeah, it's ingrained in me, especially because I feel like I get to be involved still in a way. As much as I feel removed from the street level, I'm still involved in like forming our team and doing the graphics and doing ads and like all the stuff that is involved with at least the skate industry side of it. So yeah, it's just part of who I am. It's in the DNA.
Yeah.
And my following, or whatever you call it, my fans, it's like 75% skateboarders,
Yeah.
There might have been a point when it was 100% skaters, but I'm starting to see a little bit of people knowing me from only, like, it's really rare to find someone who's like, oh, at Templeton, like, I know you from art, like, I like your paintings or like your photographs. Oh, you skated too? Like, that's rare.
Yeah.
But it happens more and more.
Yeah.
But mostly everyone knows. And it's like, because here I am at 51, there's a whole generation of, 15-year-olds who were following me who are now in their 40s. And they're grown up and have kids, and they're kind of still nostalgically looking back at skateboarding, or they still follow skateboarding and they still skate, but they've also grown as people. And so they like art and they like photography. And so like, I see that, and I feel that at my shows. It's like there's these grown adult people who are into art, but are keeping track of me or whatever, Like,
yeah. Yeah. So your most recent exhibition, which just closed a few days ago, Wires Crossed, Long Beach Art Museum. How do you say it?
Long Beach Museum of Art. Yeah.
Long Beach Museum of Art. I'm curious as to what it felt like to have what, from what I can tell, is a very big show for you. And secondly, going through all that work, basically looking at your archive of all the skate culture that you've documented. What was it like?
It was definitely a nostalgic overload. It was a trip. Luckily for the show, making the book is what really narrowed the work down, because the book kind of came before the show. I think the first copies arrived in Maastricht, where the first showing of the show was in the museum called the Bonnefanten Museum in Maastricht, Netherlands. So I had been kind of working on the show and the book at the same time. But yeah, making the book was hard because it's not as much as you think, though. I think I went through systematically every photo album you saw up there. I have it all archived digitally too, so I could search for things, but I almost wanted to just go completely analog with it and physically look at every single proof sheet myself to make sure I didn't miss anything. Because I guess when I'm digitizing a proof sheet into my digital archive, I don't necessarily put every photo in. And had done some books in the past where I didn't really look as deeply as I should have. And then after the fact, the book came out, I would see a photo like, oh crap, that should have been in that book. The Teenage Kisser book I did, I kept finding photos after the fact, like, this should have been in the book. What am I doing? I need to like be more careful when I do a book, make sure I like see everything. So that task was the hardest part, was like really just, because aside from those albums I have, which are very organized, I do have a couple boxes with just negatives in them. I have some slides that are all kind of chaotic. So I really had to like go through every slide, go through every negative in that box, go through every proof sheet, And I came up with 4,250 images, which I guess might seem like a lot for most people, but it doesn't feel like that much. But it is a lot. So, and then I had to take that 4,000 and go through the process of cutting it down. And this took over time, because I knew this was happening for so long that I've kind of been doing this, I want to say since 2012, which is when I broke my leg and kind of retired from being a pro skater. So I was age 40, broke my leg terribly, like compound fracture both bones at the bottom there. It seemed like a good bookend for the book, and like maybe I'm not going to be going on tour anymore. I'm not going to go out there in the field and shoot photos. So this is an ending, and here we are at 2023 when the book came out. So it's like like a good 10 years where I was working on forming it in my mind, sort of talking to a publisher, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess the first process was take that 4 and whittle it down to 2. I would go away for like 6 months and come back and then go, okay, here's 2,000. I need to get this to 1,000. Then I might take another break and come back. And now we get that to like 500. And when I got to that zone, I was like, okay, this could conceivably be where I'll pull from,
Yep.
And then started with that 500.
And kind of swimming around in all those images, what was most striking to you? Because in many ways, it's sort of it's your past, right? It's like a big part of your life.
So I realized I need to sort of break it down into themes. Like one is I'm trying to tell a story. I think the best way to create a photo book or any project really is to ask yourself a question: what am I trying to say here? And then as you answer that question to yourself, it kind of dictates what you're going to do, which is a really good trick I learned. I don't know who told me that. Somewhere down the line, I picked up that little piece of information, and I think it would work for a writer, a painter, or anything. Just ask yourself the question: what are you saying here? What are you doing? What do you want to say with this book? And so I guess in a way, the question I wanted to answer was, what was it like to be a pro skateboarder in this time period? Kind of a simple but also broad question. But I guess part of the task was also there's a shorthand between skateboarders. I didn't need to tell this story to a skateboarder. I needed to kind of tell this story to the guy sitting next to you on the plane who asks, what do you do? And you're like, I'm a pro skater. And they're like, what does that entail? And you start going through the basics of so I'm trying to there's a photo fan out there, because ideally this book is going to be published by a photo book publisher. Maybe it's going to be shown in a museum. That person off the street, how am I going to tell this story? Like, what was it like to be me? What was it like to be a skater at this time period? And so I wanted so I started breaking it down into themes. It's like fame was a theme. Fame and like how people wore their fame as pro skateboarders. The conflict between skateboarders and society in as far as cops and security guards go, and other ways. That was like a theme in a way, like the friction, because as a street skater, most of what you're skating is other people's property. They don't want you to skate on, either because you're going to hurt it, you're going to scratch it, or you're going to get hurt and sue them, because we live in a litigious society. So that's like a big part of our life, is like avoiding security, going out at night, using generators to skate. How can I tell like that story? The fame, the self-medication was a part of it. All these kids, like I was explaining before, like I just seemed to be obsessed with weed and beer. This is before weed was legalized. That's an aspect of it. The rock star kind of falls under the fame part. That attitude, skateboarding itself, the act of skating, the brutality of skateboarding was a theme. Like injuries, skateboard injuries. So over the years, I would always shoot people with their bruises and their cuts, which is a big part of skating. Like half of skating is falling, and you're falling on cement. You're getting torn up by asphalt, you're sacking rails, all this kind of stuff that's part of the toughness of skateboarding was a theme. Boredom was a huge theme. Actually, probably the main theme, because if I'm trying to explain like what being a pro skater was, most of the time you're just in a van. Yeah. So that was probably the biggest hurdle, was that. And then also working with Aperture was a whole different thing, because I'm coming at this thing with a really thorny, kind of cantankerous and unruly body of work that had to be contextualized in today, because 1995 to 2012 on a social level is a way different time.
Yeah, we got away.
Toxic masculinity wasn't even a word.
Yes,
but we were fully living in
Yeah.
toxically masculine sort of. A tour van is a toxic place
Sure.
in a lot of ways. And another part of it is like everyone in the book who's interviewed also is like now sober. They're adults and they're sober. And looking back, the first thing they said was just like, holy crap, I was such a pile. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, Justin Regan, who's like, was a team manager. He's photographed in the book and he's interviewed. I mean, he overdosed on a tour where he was like in charge of minors and stuff. And he's like literally overdosing and at the hospital getting the freaking Narcan shot. And while he's supposed to be, you know, in charge of a minor. And so he talks about that stuff, and it's like how he got clean from the help. I mean, the company, instead of firing him, said, we'll help pay for your rehab. You know, we don't want to just cut you loose. Like, we feel like, I mean, they should have been super pissed. Like, fuck you, you're fired. Like, you know,
Yeah.
But instead, as this was the America, or the shoe company we wrote for, you know, to their credit, they like helped him get clean instead of just shunning him. And,
Why do you think there was so much excess in terms of weed smoking, beer drink, you know, alcohol? Do you think it was skate culture specifically? Do you think it was that time in history? Do you think it was because you, as you pointed out earlier, you slam a lot and maybe it's like a self-medicating because at the end of the day, it's like 4 beers will take the edge off of all those bangs and stings that you have?
I wonder, I think, I guess I'm not an expert, but I guess my hypothesis would be that there's sort of like 3 prongs. It's like, one is there's, in Justin's case, I think it was just addictive personality. Just that kind of person. Like, once you start something, you go all the way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like that in skateboarding.
Yeah.
I think a smaller part was like pain or something. Like, you know, I don't think it was like, oh, I'm hurt, so I'm going to smoke weed. It was like, they just wanted, I think just being on a constant buzz was part of it. And that goes to other people's psychoses. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like if they had, you know, bad family life or just not wanting to deal with it. Who knows?
Yeah.
I forget what the third one was I had in my head at one point. But yeah, mostly just those two, I would imagine. Just like, you know, hip hop culture that they were part of.
Yes.
Just like, it's just part of it, you know, like I listened to so much damn hip hop and got hotboxed so many times as a non-smoker, you know. I was like, I was just like, before we split into 2 vans and we had like the clean van and we had like our van became the nerd van. And then we called the other one Stoner Loser van. So that was the one where everyone would just hotbox. But in the early days, it was just me hanging out the window trying to drive, like, because I was so sick of inhaling smoke.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's so funny now because I think weed's so not a big deal now. But like, so much of our time was like, because we wouldn't want to cross like a state border.
Yeah.
So they would like smoke all their weed, get into a new state, and then everyone was obsessed with like, find a guy who can give us weed, like talk to the shop, see if they know someone. Like everything was about find that guy who's got weed, find a guy, get to the demo, this stuff. And like, it just seemed like all that, like crossing into Canada, ditch the weed or try to hide it at a gas station and then like cross the border.
Right.
Inevitably get fully checked. Like, you know, they fully notice that it's a bunch of potheads. They search the whole van. We have to sit there for hours, like all that kind of stuff. You probably dealt with the same.
No, I had the exact same experience. But, you know, I just thought of this. I mean, it's kind of ironic, but now that it's sort of mostly legal, there seems to be less of it in the like top level, the top pro surfers, the highest like level of performance, way less drugs in general, from what I know. I mean, I'm slightly removed. When I was in that period and I was, those greatest surfers of the period were my best friends, everyone was high. Everyone was high, and it was illegal.
Constantly buzzed.
Yeah. I shouldn't say everyone was high, but I mean, there were a lot
social
of
media and the mainstreaming of skateboarding and surfing have probably done a lot to that. Like people now are way more aware of like health than ever.
Wellness is a word that's
Wellness and
only
health
recent.
is a huge thing now. So they're really doing, that's part of it. I think the fact that everything's on social media, it's harder to hide stuff. So I think people are probably cleaner for that reason. And like it is. It's like there's more straight up athlete, jock type people who approach surfing or skating as like, this is my my body is my business, and like
Yep,
I'm doing
yep.
this. The Olympics, obviously, you get drug tested. I would imagine. I think if to be in the Olympics, so you literally can't smoke weed and be in the Olympics. And a lot of
Yes.
people, that's their goal now, is to be in the Olympics and stuff. So those are probably reasons why it's less now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any, I think a good way out of this is you showed me the miniature of the show that you're about to have, and you're designing that. But what's like an average day like for you? What? I imagine there are multiple projects going on at once.
Yeah. An average day is pretty much work. I mean, I feel like I'm like most people, I'm probably battling procrastination. I feel like I'm battling procrastination, but then when I look back, I realize I am pretty productive, I guess, as a person. And so this year for me, every free moment is going to be trying to paint. I'm like, ideally, I would like to make 12 paintings to fit in this show. And so that's what I got to do. But because of my position with Toy Machine, I have to drop that at some point and do graphics. So I'll get like an assignment essentially. So like from my company saying like, we need, 10 graphics by the end of March for this new, catalog we're making. And so that means I got to drop everything and probably spend 2 weeks on a full crash course making graphics. And that'll keep me from painting. So like, I kind of just wake up and whatever is in front of me is what I do,
Yep.
Today it was just like we went to get our blood drawn because we hadn't been to the doctor since the pandemic. And so we started like, we're 50, we need to maybe see a doctor. So we got our blood drawn this morning. And then I just kind of worked on that little model, a scale model of the gallery where I'm going to be showing in November, and was building that. And then you came over. So I, did a podcast. And then after you're going, I guess I'll probably get into the studio and figure. Oh no, I actually got to do the book. I have to work on this book of photographs of Paris that I'm working on, because that's really due. I got an email this morning from the publisher saying like they need that as soon as possible. So in a way, it's like I should be painting, but I need to get this book done. So sort of begrudgingly, I'm gonna get the book done.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, every day I wake up and just look at my email, and it's like either I have to do something for Toy Machine, or I have to do something for photography. I have to do something painting, which is I'm trying to self-impose. But again, like I like to complain, but like how blessed are you that that's what I get to do every day?
Yeah.
Is just solve problems towards a goal, and that goal is so ethereal and just it's about art.
Yep.
For the most part, I'm making graphics. Like sure, like a skateboard graphic is a commodity. It's like a thing we're selling, but skateboarding is so loose that it's like there's freedom there. There's so much creativity and like within that little form. Again, you're so constrained by the form of like that little shape, and what you can do with it. But then it's like so fun to create that. And the fact that I get to juggle between those things is like what a like a crazy life I get to live, because I get to switch hats all the time, and I don't get burnt out on any one thing. I do photography intensely for periods, and then I'll just go, okay, it's painting time, and I have to paint for a show. So now I'm going to be painter ed most of this year, and then after that show, I'm probably going to go jump back into a photo thing and like get back into photo ed. And then Toy Machine's kind of a constant. I have to do that periodically every couple months, do that kind of stuff. But there's like phone calls, dealing with company stuff all the time, and just dealing with stuff. But I mean, it's all in the pursuit of just fun and like ridiculous stuff that really is kind of inconsequential in the world in a lot of ways. So I guess I just feel really lucky that I get to do this.
It's a good life.
Don't take it for granted. That's the thing. It's like every time I've got a chance to do something that's this incredible, it's like I feel like my job is to knock it out of the park if I can, like do the best I can do, because I want to get to that next level and keep this ball rolling. Because I just like I come from such poverty in a lot of ways. Like I said, we lived in a trailer park. My dad was just a warehouse worker. We didn't come from any money, so it's like the fact that I'm here living in a house I bought is just, I'm way past the gravy point. Like everything's incredible. So I just want to keep it going. If I can here I did it and I won already, you know, it's like I'm 51 and I'm doing exactly what I was doing when I was 18. I haven't changed. Like people ask me, what's up? What are you doing? I'm like, literally the same thing I had been doing since the last time you saw me. Like to friends, friends are always like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't do anything different. You know what I do? I paint, I do photos, I do toy machines. And that's kind of that's what I've been doing.
Great.
Since 1993. So yeah, really stoked.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for making the time, and it's great chatting with you.
Really good to talk to you, Jamie.
Soundings is brought to you by the Surfer's Journal and is produced by me, Jamie Brissick, and Jonathan Shiflett. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Our theme song is Give Me a Wave by Asuka Matsumiya and Paz Lenchantin. The Surfer's Journal is a reader-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Outerknown, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. The journal is published bi-monthly. If you haven't done so yet, I encourage you to visit surfersjournal.com and subscribe. This episode of Soundings is presented by Costa Sunglasses, the badge of the explorer. For over 40 years and counting, Costa has remained steadfast in their dedication to not only crafting the most durable, functional, and long-lasting eyewear, but in protecting our waterways and natural resources. Whether you're on the back deck scanning for yellowtail, eyeing a set swinging wide at an empty point, camped out on a bluff at the end of a rotted two-track, or anywhere and everywhere in between, Costas are built to help you see what's out there. Head over to costadelmar.com today to find just the right pair for you, no matter where the water takes you. Thank you for listening to Soundings, and until next time.